You can have a seat. Good morning. Welcome to City Church. How's everybody doing? Happy almost Thanksgiving? Woo! Oh wow, that wasn't 3 woos. That's it? Are you guys not? Are you dreading the family time together? Is that what's happening? Ooh, oh, sorry, touchy subject this morning. I didn't know. Welcome to City Church. My name is Drake. I'm the pastor here. It's an honor to have you gathering with us today in person and online. It's going to be an awesome day. We're celebrating the end of the service with some baptisms. Put your hands together. Our friends Sharoon and Kayla are getting baptized. It's going to be awesome. Really excited for them. As we continue our series, The New Family of Jesus, today, a couple of quick announcements. They're not announcements, they're just kind of information for you. Our mission here at City Church is to help people find their way to God from where they are. We do that by practicing the way of Jesus together in Boulder. So what that means for you, no matter where you're walking in on your spiritual journey, you are loved, you're safe, you're welcome here. We're really glad to have you. Our desire is to meet you where you are, help you take some next steps toward Jesus. So really grateful for you to be a part of today's gathering. We're continuing in this series, The New Family of Jesus, all the way through the end of the year. And so if you want to go back, you can catch on our YouTube channel, our podcast, all of the work we've done up to this point, both in our weekend gatherings and then going into our city groups. But really excited for that. By the way, Angela she just did our scripture reading, and she is like a multi-tool around here. She does a bunch of stuff. She does everything from vacuuming to serving on different teams. So put your hands together for Angela serving today. In addition, Maddie mentioned our Christmas team party, and that is a way to get all of our team members that actively serve together to celebrate and say thank you, which is the least that we could possibly do. So can we just for a moment celebrate everyone that's serving today, and City Kids and the Welcome Team and on the cafe and our production team and everywhere. Man, we're so grateful for the team that helps City Church gather on the weekends. So thank you again. Okay, so let's get into the message today. When I was 17 years old, I was the youngest in my class by one person. There was one girl that was younger than me out of 637 students. I was the youngest person almost in my entire grade, and so I graduated high school at 17 years old. I was having a conversation with my son this week. Both of my kids were born in December. My oldest was like, "Dad, why am I the youngest in my class?" I'm like, "I know, bro. Like, it feels like you're young, but you're not the youngest. There's other people that are younger than you. I was the youngest, and I know your pain." So, 17 years old, graduated high school, still look like I'm 14, and me and some friends decided to take a road trip to Tennessee. Woo! I know, it's not exactly that exciting. There's like a friend out there we were going to go see, and so me and a couple friends jump into my mom's car because it was the safest version of a vehicle that we had out of all of our cars combined to make a road trip, and we drive to Tennessee to go see some friends who've never been to Tennessee. It's not really a destination trip. We're just, 17, kind of that freedom, exercising those muscles. So we drive to Tennessee, and we meet our friend out there, and he started to like tour us around the area, which is kind of relative because what are you doing? I mean, Nashville's there, and we were in the Nashville area, but all right, anyway, so we're in Tennessee, we're touring Nashville, and we ended up in some pretty fancy neighborhoods in Nashville, which they are there, right? Anybody been to Nashville? Cool, this story's not landing like I thought it would. I thought you guys would be really excited for me, and nope, you're not feeling it. Okay, just hang with me for a second. So we're rolling around Nashville in these different neighborhoods, and at one point we're driving by just what feels like endless fields of corn. Like corn everywhere as far as the eye can see. And the guy that's driving us around, he says, "Hey, this is where Tim McGraw lives." Anybody know Tim McGraw? All right, he's a famous country artist, okay? He's got some decent songs out there. He's kind of a big deal. And it occurred to me, I mean, we're just like corn after corn after corn, and he has this song, "Where the Green Grass Grows." Right? I want to live where the green grass grows and watch my corn pop up in rows. I'm like, oh, he did it. He's living the dream. Anyway, so we're driving by Tim McGraw's house, and somewhere in the corn maze is his actual mansion, but you can't get there. And as we're driving around, at some point the crowd in the car becomes aware of the reality that this is Tim McGraw's corn that we're driving by. Are you tracking with me? And someone in the car also becomes uniquely aware of the reality that there are no fences around all this corn. Which is interesting to me because I feel like if I was a celebrity, I'd have fences around my house and my corn, but not Tim McGraw. The corn is his fence, okay? And so in the frenzy of the moment, somehow this entire car of people convinces me that it's a great idea to pull the car over, jump out, run into the cornfield, grab this golden, beautiful husk of corn, and jump back in the car and run for dear life because it's a high-level felony to steal Tim McGraw's corn. So, we pull over, and I did just that. I stole Tim McGraw's corn. 17 years old. Tim McGraw, if you're watching this, I'm so sorry. He's not watching. It's not. You don't have to worry about it. But if you ever do, I stole your corn. I was young. I was impressionable. It was a weak moment. Okay. And I look back at this moment, and it's kind of silly, right? But I mean, the weight of friends carries significant like reality in our lives, do they not? I mean, can you imagine like being in that same scenario without all the hype people in the car? Can you imagine just me driving by myself by Tim McGraw's house and like motivating myself to go steal his corn? Is that not weird and kind of desperate? You're like, what is wrong with you, right? Like it makes sense in the context of community and friendship where people can influence you to act and behave and think and live a certain way, and in other ways it would be totally ridiculous to do the opposite. So in that moment, even though it's kind of a low-shelf, silly moment, my character, my judgment, my decision-making, they're all honestly deformed by the influence of those in the car, right? I do something that I would not do on my own. Everyone in the room has a story like that, right? So we could just take the rest of the morning and pass the microphone around and talk about what versions of Tim McGraw's corn you have stolen. You're like, absolutely not. My stories are not PG. We can't go there. So I feel that. So 2 weeks ago, I was with some friends again. Oh, no. And we went into a neighborhood again. You see where this is going? It's already just a bad scenario. And we get together at our friend Seth and Maddie's house over here in Gun Barrel, and we begin to hype each other up with a game plan of how we're going to go out into this neighborhood and we're going to stir up some trouble. And then sure enough, they were all terrible influences on me again 2 weeks ago. We're talking 20 years apart from the moment. I'm not 37. How old am I? Whatever. Almost 20 years apart from the moment. And you would think I've grown and matured, but surely not. I'm in a room. My friends influence me once again, and we start walking around this neighborhood 2 weeks ago, and we begin to ask God to lead us to people, to serve through prayer, and to care for them. And guess what? We actually did it. Like there were real live people, strangers that we did not know, that we encountered as we walked these neighborhoods, and we prayed for them. We laid hands on the sick, to pray for their healing, prayed for their families. It was crazy. The whole shebang. Got phone numbers to follow up on spiritual conversation. Ridiculous, right? I mean, I need some better friends. You see, there is this incredible space of friends being able to influence us in different directions. It's actually wildly intimidating to walk a neighborhood and pray for strangers, right? And some of you are like, I don't want your friends. Never in a million years do I want to do what you just described. I feel you. So no Tim McGraw, no prayer walking for you. But, hear me, our friends influence us in heavy ways, right? And so I gathered in a room full of friends 2 weeks ago, and we stirred each other on towards something wildly different. In this series, we've been talking about the new family of Jesus, the invitation of Jesus, what Jesus came to accomplish with his life, with his death, with his burial, with his resurrection, what it means to follow Jesus, not as an individual, but within community. And so the first week, we talked about the family of Jesus, literally the crazy upside invitation to follow Jesus, and with Jesus comes his family. The second week, we talked about Jesus and this new family as a gift, that the people around you and yourself are a gift to one another. 2 weeks ago, we talked about this new family of Jesus as formation, right? So in the same way that my character was influenced by my 17-year-old self, by the friends in the car, and then last week by my friends in Seth and Maddie's living room, right? We are formed by the people that we hang out with. True or false? Right? Whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, you become like the people you hang out with. Absolutely. And then last week we looked at the new family of Jesus and community and witness together, that we are witnesses of the good news and how we actually live on mission together in this city and in the circles where we live, work, and play. So today we are talking about the new family of Jesus and the relationship between community and friendship. Community and friendship. And here's what this means. And if you're a guest with us, just hang tight for a moment, because the invitation here is that you're not just like attending a weekend gathering, but a family to be a part of here at City Church. And so the longer that we stay, the more that we invest in a community, the more we will develop deeper relationships. And over time, we go deeper with some than others, right? Everyone in the room is like a Lego. Anybody Lego fans in the room? 3 of us. Cool. Let's hang out later. Let's build some Legos. This is going to be great. My kids love Legos. I love Legos. There's like different sizes of Legos. And based on your personality and your makeup and your past experiences, every single person in here is some form of Lego. And you have only so many connectors, right? Some of you are extroverts and you're like the bigger piece of Lego, and you can have a lot of relationships and a lot of friends, and a lot of people can be connected to you. And some of you are like that little 2-piece. And then even that, you're like, don't touch my other, nope, this is mine. These are my two pieces, don't touch me, right? We all have limited capacity for relationships. You can't be friends with everybody, and you know that. But there's also this giant glaring issue of loneliness in America where 54% of Americans currently identify as saying there's not one person on the planet that knows them well. 54% of living, breathing Americans today say there's not one person on the planet that knows them well. And a spouse doesn't count. A friend. And so we're talking about friend, not that your spouse can't be your friend, but it's different. So friendship is a good thing, right? But the reality is when we gather shoulder to shoulder like today, it's great. Hopefully you meet some people and you feel like seen and loved, and that's great. And we have city groups that kind of take it from this gathering to face in like 12 people. But the reality is there's a difference between community and friendship, right? There's a difference in what we're doing right now, and then our city groups gathering in homes with 12 people, and then the really close people that know all of you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Right? There are some people in my life that know everything about me, all of my stuff. And if you knew all of my stuff, you'd never come back to City Church. Right? There is a time and a place where you can't share everything with everybody, and you know that. There's also this reality on the other side of the danger of friendship, because with friendship comes risk. And many people have grown up with being hurt or betrayed or been in dysfunctional relationships and dysfunctional family to where the idea of friendship is just not worth it. Just why open myself up to being hurt again? And so listen, friendship is a good thing, and some of you are a little less shaded toward that than others. And so we have community and large gatherings, but then we have friendship. And so today we're going to talk about what does it mean to follow Jesus and carry this idea of friendship into our formation. So right, this community, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. There are people that you don't hand pick and choose, that you choose to live life with. That's the church. That's the family of Jesus, right? You start following Jesus. Sharun and Kayla, they're getting baptized today, and whether they like it or not, I know it's awesome. Whether they like it or not, they got me as a part of the deal with the family of Jesus, and that's unfortunate. All right, I know that it's like, oh man, it comes with that guy. Yes, it does. And so right, there's sometimes when you're in community and you don't hand select the people that you're living life with. That's actually really good for you and for me when it comes to formation. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. But there's still the need for friendship. There's still the need for chemistry. And so I was talking to my buddy Alex this week, and he said, man, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I'm so glad that we're talking about this reality this weekend, because he said, man, I need my boys. I need my homies. I need my people. He might not have said it like that, but like he was expressing the reality that, man, I realize that I need to be in community with people that I don't handpick, so that I'm formed in a way outside of my own personal preferences. But I also feel this need to be fully known and to know someone else. And so why friendship? It is an essential need, and it's a deep part of our formation, because we become like those we're closest to. And again, the stat, 54% of Americans say that there's not one person on the planet that knows them well. And that might be volitional, it might not be. So let's talk about it today. We're going to look at two parts, friendship with Jesus and then friendship with one another, okay? So let's go to Mark chapter 3 again, our teaching text for today, and we're just going to walk through this together. Mark chapter 3, Jesus goes up on a mountain and called to him those whom he desired. This is a moment. In Luke 6, we have a parallel passage where Jesus goes up on a mountain. He prays all night long for this scenario right here. He's picking out of the crowds of followers that he's beginning to gather, the movement that's beginning to move, and he picks 12 of them to follow closely and to live really deep, intimate life with. So he spends all night in prayer, and this is the scene that we get following that moment. He goes up on the mountain, he calls to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. I don't want you to miss this. One of the incredible realities of following Jesus is that Jesus is God incarnate. He's God in the flesh. If you want to know what God is like, Jesus would say, look at me. Look right here. You don't have to guess. You don't have to wonder. God is knowable, and he's personal. And so Jesus, he calls those to himself, those whom he desired. And for some of you, you've never been exposed to the actual love of God. You've heard about the love of God, but this is God's heart and posture for you, that he desires you. He desires a relationship with you, for you to know him and for him to fully know you. He knows you, and he made you, and he created you with purposes and deep identity, but there is something that comes alive when we're brought back into relationship with God. Jesus desires a relationship with you. And it says that they came to him. You see, there's a volitional reality. Jesus doesn't superimpose relationship on you and I. He doesn't say, you will know me. He doesn't make us love him. That's called abuse. He respects our dignity, he respects our will, and says, if you want to, you can follow me, you can come to me. The invitation is open, but there is a volitional decision on our end. And some of you are on the fence today on what you're going to do with Jesus. You're wrestling with it, trying to figure it out. What role does Jesus play? Who is he? Who am I? Like, who am I to him? What does all this mean? And the invitation is clear. Jesus desires you, but you have a part to play of whether or not you're going to respond. Now watch what happens. He appointed 12, whom he named the apostles. They're going to be the leaders in the early church, so that they might, listen, be with him. Some of you have been around church your entire life. You've been around religion and like religious activity, and everything has been filled with what you need to do to make God happy with you. Like, what do you need to do to stay out of trouble? What do you need to do? Like, how many, times do you have to confess stealing Tim McGraw's corn before you're finally okay? Like, what, do you have to go back to Tim McGraw's house and return it? Like, what does it take to be right with God? And it's amazing that the invitation from Jesus is first to be with him before it's to do anything for him. Are you guys tracking with me? Yeah. Be with Jesus. What does it mean to follow Jesus? We talk about it all the time. What does it mean to apprentice my life under Jesus as Lord, as King, yes, but also as friend and Savior? It means to be with Jesus in relationship, and then in formation to become like Jesus. Why? Because we become like the people we hang out with, yes or no? Yeah. And then to do the things that Jesus would do if he were me. That's it. That's what it means to follow Jesus. Not rearrange the mental furniture of my mind, believe a certain right things and reject a few wrong things, and then I'm good to go for the rest of my life, and hopefully I go to heaven when I die. The invitation to follow Jesus is something we do right now with our lives, and it lasts now and forever. It is an eternal reality that we are meant to live in the present. So the invitation, he says he invited them so that they might be with him, and then he might send them out to preach. Aha! I knew it. There's always a catch, right, with Jesus. Like, the second you think you're just hanging out with Jesus, then he's like, just kidding, right? No, listen. What is their job? To be with him. What is Jesus' job? To send them out. And by the way, before you freak out and think that means everyone needs to go start churches, to preach just simply means to proclaim. It's what we talked about last week. To proclaim the good news, to be a witness of the good things that God has done in our lives and around us. And he gives them the authority to cast out demons, to be like Jesus, to literally do the things that he would do. You guys tracking with me? So, friendship with Jesus. He desired to be with him. And Jesus is God in the flesh. And so let's do a quick tie to the arc of Scripture so you can kind of follow me. And if you're kind of new to the Bible, just stay with me. I don't have time to read it for you. But if you go read it on your own, the Bibles, by the way, in the seat backs in front of you are our gift to you. So by all means, take one of those, download the YouVersion Bible app, whatever. Get into the Scriptures yourself. But if you go read Genesis 1, 2, and 3, kind of the creation account of everything kicking off in the Scriptures, we see in Genesis 1, 2, and 3 this incredible moment of God creating everything, but then he creates humanity. And the language that the Scripture author uses in Genesis is, let us make man in our image. There's this really weird thing going on where God is speaking in the plural. Let us make man in our image. What is going on? Is God confused? Is he got multiple personalities? What are going on? Right? There's this reality that we believe as followers of Jesus of God existing in Trinity. That is, God exists as the Father, as the Son, Jesus, and as the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God that lives within us. So God exists three persons in one. I heard Tyler Staton say it this way, that God is not just friendly, God is friendship. That at the core of the existence of God, before he created anything, is God has existed always in community. And so then when he makes us in his image, he makes us communal. He makes us in need of relationships. He makes us to thrive in relationship. So friendship with God is where somewhere along the way, and it might be today that this comes and like begins to click for the first time for you. But friendship with God is that somewhere along the way, you and I discover that he actually likes us, that God is for us, and that he's safe, and that we can be safe with him, safe enough to be loved, safe enough to let our guard down, safe enough to repent, which means to change what we think about reality and turn into a different direction. He's safe enough to receive forgiveness from, to be loved and be known by. At some point, you kind of smash into this invitation of friendship with God. Not this great creator that sits off kind of aloof in the clouds, waiting for you to mess up and just going to strike you with a lightning bolt, right? But God who is friendship, who then creates you in his image for the purpose of community with other people and himself. We talked about the invitation from God is both horizontal and vertical restoration. Jesus came to restore that which is broken, our relationships with one another and our relationship with God. And so then it's no surprise in Genesis 3 that we see the enemy, this great deceiver, this evil one that Jesus calls him, the father of lies, the Satan. We see in Genesis 3 that he takes aim at friendship with God. The temptation that happens in Genesis 3, where humanity leans into trusting in themselves other than God, is a direct attack on, is God trustworthy? Is he good? And it's an attack on friendship. And so it makes sense that one of the temptations that you and I have is to keep part of ourselves back. That even as a follower of Jesus, there are moments where you're going to be tempted to keep part of yourself back, to try to do things on your own, to stop asking for help, to let the idealized version of yourself be the only lovable version that you put forward for other people to see. It makes sense that the enemy is going to attack both friendship with God and friendship with others that love Jesus and love you enough to call you into that way. And so when we look at Jesus, 2 weeks ago, we looked at Jesus using the language in John 15. He said, I have called you friends. I don't call you servants, because servants don't know what their master's up to, but I have called you my friends. As in, Jesus is saying, hey friends, there's nothing about me that I have kept away from you. I wonder how many of us could say that about our relationships. There's nothing about me that I have kept away from you. That's probably the opposite for most of us. There's many things about me I have kept away from you, because I don't know if you're reliable and trustworthy and safe. You see, Jesus doesn't just demonstrate friendship with God. He is, or live it, but he actually lives it with those that he's in community with. He gives us both his promises and his sorrows. So I want to give you two pictures. He calls these guys in the community, right? You just saw that picture, to be with him, that whole shebang. But I want to just give you two highlights from the life of Jesus of watching him live this out in community. The first one is in Mark 9. Look at this. So after 6 days, Jesus goes up with Peter and James and John. He leads them to a high mountain by themselves, and Jesus is transfigured before them. This is this crazy moment when Jesus' glory begins to shine through reality, and his clothes become radiant, intensely white, as no one on earth could bleach them. Mark's language is like, he's like trying to capture it. He's like, it was kind of hard to describe, but there's this moment when Peter, James, and John are on the mountain and Jesus begins to reveal his divinity. And there's this like kind of amazing moment where they get to see like Jesus kind of highlight reel. Does that make sense? So there are people in your life, hopefully, that you get to share your highlight reel with. Like they know the best of you. Does that make sense to you? Right? They know like the very best versions of you, and they're kind of there to celebrate it with you. So we see Jesus giving, kind of revealing himself in this way, the best versions of him. But then we also see him sharing his sorrows, the deepest parts, the hardest parts, the heavy parts. Look at Matthew 26. Jesus went with them to a place, this is right before he goes to the cross, to Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And then he said to them, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me. And this is a brutal scene where we see Jesus wrestling before he goes to the cross. There's so much pressure on him that he, from this moment, goes away and he begins to pray in agony. He's so stressed that he's sweating literal drops of blood, which is a medical condition when the capillaries in your skin are beginning to burst and you're actually literally sweating drops of blood. This is the most raw version of Jesus that we see in the scriptures. We see him do a lot of different things, but this is a moment when he's totally real and transparent about where he's at, and he invites his friends into that space. Do you see it? We live in a culture that anytime you and I cry, if we cry, some of us are like, I'm allergic to crying. I've never cried. My tear ducts, I had them removed when I was 3. But anytime we cry, what do you say? I'm sorry. You wipe your, I'm sorry. We live in a culture where we say, I'm sorry for our feelings. Does that ever strike you as a really, really, really poor, relating ability? Like I'm sorry for feeling? Some of you are like, yeah, it makes total sense to me. I'm with you, but it's so interesting that I'm sorry for the real parts of me showing up. That's what we're really saying. You see, Jesus wasn't just a great friend to others, which is expected of Jesus. Well, of course he was, but he invited friendship into his life. Does that make sense to you? So we don't just follow Jesus in theory, we follow Jesus in practice. So as his followers, we don't want to just be great friends, but we want to invite friendship. He calls us the same. Love each other as I have loved you. So let's talk for a moment about friendship with others. That same story, Genesis narrative, right? We see God create Adam and Eve, and but before that, we see him create Adam. And it's kind of interesting. He's got beauty. He's in the garden. He's got provision. He's got friendship with God. He's got projects to cultivate. I mean, it's kind of like this awesome, manly environment of like building things, and it's a lot like kind of pretty exciting moment for Adam. But then God looks at it and says, this isn't good. Because it's not good that man would be alone. Then he creates Eve. He doesn't have a friend. And so we see in this really unique moment in Genesis the need for community that God creates, but then also it's attacked. When they are deceived, when they choose to trust in themselves and not God, and they sin and they rebel against God, they don't just hide from God, they hide from one another. So we see one of the issues in the human condition is not just that our relationship with God is broken, but our relationship with one another is broken. Some of you are wrestling with the reality of whether or not you even care, or if you believe of whether or not your relationship with God is broken. That's fair. You're totally welcome to do that and to wrestle with it. But there's no doubt in the room that our relationships with one another are broken, right? It's why no one was excited when I said Happy Thanksgiving this morning. Everybody's like, nope, that is not. There's plenty of brokenness, right? Like brokenness is something that we don't have to look very far to find, both in ourselves and in our relationships that are closest to us. I heard it said when talking about friendship this week, adult friendship can be described simply as two people saying, hey man, I haven't seen you in forever. We should hang out soon. Over and over and over again until they die. That's adult friendship. This idea of connecting but never actually do anything with it. So here's the issue. When we talk about friendship, I think Eugene Peterson captures it beautifully. Listen to Eugene's kind of capturing here of the issue of friendship in the Western world. Each of us has contact with hundreds of people who never look beyond our surface appearance. We have dealings with hundreds of people who the moment they set their eyes on us begin calculating what use we can be to them and what they can get out of us. We meet hundreds of people who take one look at us, make a snap judgment, and then they slot us into a category so that they don't have to deal with us as persons. They treat us as something less than we are, and if we are constant in association, as in we hang out with them long enough, then we also become less. The great issue of friendship in the West is this right here, that this is a felt reality. This is an experience. This is not something abstract. This is probably something you have walked through. And so friendship with Jesus is where it starts because our ability to relate rightly with one another starts first with our relationship with God. However, how do we relate rightly with one another? How do you have healthy community and friendship? Well, let me give you a couple of things of like what friendship in the way of Jesus cannot be, and then let's look at Jesus and the model, okay? And we'll wrap our time up that way. So when it comes to friendship in the way of Jesus, number one, it can't be made in isolation, right? You and I live, our habits, our lifestyles, they perpetuate isolation, right? In a world of garage door clickers and devices that live in our pocket, and then now even, post-COVID, the ability to work from home, like we just live isolated lives, both intentionally and then we're just kind of formed by the culture around us. And so it makes it really hard to cultivate community and friendships when our habits and our lifestyles do the exact opposite. Would you agree? Yeah, so it's just important to recognize the water that we swim in. Like, you don't just fall into friendship. Like, you remember when you were a little kid, you hang out on the playground, you just kind of be friends with anybody? Some of you are like, nope, I've never been friends with anybody. But most kids, right, you just kind of put them on a playground, they can be friends with whoever, right? Well, maybe we need more playgrounds for adults. Maybe that's the issue. Like, for us, right, we have intentional lifestyles and habits that lead to isolation. So it's just something to acknowledge. The second thing that friendship in the way of Jesus cannot be is it cannot be codependent. This is so important, and I can't speak to your background. We have different homes and environments we've grown up in, different ways of relating to people. So it's important that we kind of know where we are and what we need to do in relationship to others. But friendship can bring us closer to God. It's meant to do that, but it is never meant to replace God. Friendship can bring us closer to God, but it is never meant to replace God. You see, if you and I come to an individual, if you come to this community, if you come to these leaders, if you go to your city group hoping that they're going to fix all the gaps and all the longings and all the desires and all the things that are wrong in your life, they are going to be destroyed under the weight of something God is meant to do in your life. This is true of relationships too, right? You start dating someone or you get into a marriage relationship. A codependent one is when I lean into you to do everything that God was meant to do. There's a God-shaped hole in the life of every human that's meant to be filled. So if we're not careful, we can come to community because it's beautiful and it's good and it's life-giving and it's loving, but then we can begin to crush those around us with the weight of something God is meant to do. Does that make sense? So here's the whole point. We cannot lean into friendship with other in a healthy way without first prioritizing friendship with God. Okay? Okay. Let's keep going. The last one, just again, what friendship with with others cannot be. It also can't be in relation to like this superiority complex, which is, we would be slow to name this out loud, but this is a real life experience for some. That some of us, we get into relationships, we befriend someone because they meet a need in us. Their neediness makes me feel needed. Their lack of confidence makes me feel confident. Right? We have to know that about ourselves. That's a really subtle reality under the surface of our lives. But we can't get into a relationship because you make me feel better because I'm so much better than you. Right? That's really jacked up. But if we're honest, these are the realities under the surface that we have to pay attention to. So what does it look like? Friendship in the way of Jesus. Let's land the plane today that way. Eugene Peterson continues. He says it this way. He says, okay, that's the reality we're walking in, but then someone enters our life who isn't looking for someone to use. This person is leisurely enough to find out what's really going on in us. They're secure enough not to exploit our weaknesses or attack our strengths. They recognize our inner life and understand the difficulty of living out our inner convictions, as in the struggle we have of being the person we want to be and the person we really are. And they confirm what is deepest within us. A friend. It's beautiful, isn't it? Sounds great. I want to be that kind of friend. And I want those kinds of friends. So let's go back to Mark 3 really fast, just to get this picture. Jesus goes up on a mountain. He calls to him those whom he desired, and they came to him. And he appointed 12 so that it might be with him, and he might send them out to preach and have authority to cast out demons. Let me give you just a really quick snapshot here. That word desire can also be translated to enjoy. He called those to him that he enjoyed. What does it look like to like friendship in the way of Jesus? It needs to be people you enjoy. Right? Sometimes in city group, you choose each other regardless, and over time you begin to enjoy each other. But some people still just like chew with their mouth open, and you're like, God's grace to you and mercy. Yeah, right. But there are some people that you enjoy. Yeah, right. So Jesus calls to those who he desired, those who he enjoyed. He wanted to be with them. He enjoyed them, and part of friendship is just like the ability to enjoy one another, to play well together, right? Play is a place where our guard comes down. We casually enjoy each other in relationships. But the second thing is, right, so he desired them, he enjoyed them, but he also was going to send them out to preach, right? So this idea of sending them out, what does that mean? So we have Jesus, like this be with Jesus relationship. Okay, that's where it starts, but then becoming like Jesus and doing what he did. He's sending them out, as in they become like him. And he gives them the authority to do the things that he would do, right? So you see the relational circles that Jesus has. These people influence him, and he influences them, okay? So I want to break it down for you very simply. Are the people that you are friends with, are they making you more like Jesus or less like Jesus? More like the person you want to be or less like the person that you want to be? Are they helping you live into the kingdom reality real time, or are they devolving you into something else? You become like the people you live life with. And so when you look around at the people that are around you, do you want to become like them? And then we should ask the same of ourselves. Am I the kind of person that is a good friend to others? And this is not meant to carry like guilt and shame, not at all, because we're all works in progress. I didn't ask Seth and Maddie if I could use this story, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. Seth and Maddie are some good leaders here, some friends of ours, and they were driving to Texas down 25. And you go all the way down 25 until you hit New Mexico, and then you head which direction? I'm directionally challenged. Head that away. East. Thank you. West. That's the way you go. So you head east, and they're enjoying their road trip, and then they miss their exit in New Mexico and keep driving. The issue is once they missed their exit, there was like no version of turning around. By the time they realized what they were after, and that they needed to turn around, it was kind of like that. Either way, it's the same amount, right? So when it comes to following Jesus, sometimes we make a decision to turn around, which is great, right? Like to turn around and start going in the right direction, but there's still like a lot of miles to cover to get back where you wanted to go. So some of you, like we're in relationships and we have habits and behaviors and we're being formed, and some of you feel this weight because like, okay, cool, I'm turning toward Jesus, but I've been going in the wrong direction for so long, I'm finally heading in the right direction. That's great, but there's still some miles to cover, right? You guys feel that? So just permission. Listen, don't beat yourself up. If you're heading in the right direction, celebrate that. That's wonderful, right? But also don't be discouraged when there's some miles to cover, okay? Now, quick observation. Jesus chose his close friends, right? He couldn't be deep with everyone. And so he welcomed, like it's interesting, Jesus welcomed everyone, but he only prioritized a few. And that's the unique dance that we have of following Jesus. Jesus had relational limits. He too was a Lego, okay? And so let me just show you Mark 9 and Matthew one more time. Just I want you to catch this. After 6 days, Jesus goes up with Peter, James, and John. How many people did he pick on the front end? 12, do you guys remember? He chose 12 of them. How many people get invited on top of the mountain with Jesus? Oh, snap. Can you imagine what it was like to be the other dudes? Peter, James, and John get to go up, and the other dudes are like, why aren't we invited? Jesus goes on top of the mountain with Peter, James, and John. And we see consistently this rhythm that Jesus was close with the 12, but he went even deeper with Peter, James, and John consistently. So we see them here, but watch this, in Matthew as well. Jesus goes up with them to a place called Gethsemane, says to his disciples, that's going to be talking about the 12, sit here while I go over there and pray. And then taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, that's James and John, Peter, James, and John, he talks to them and then tells them, my soul is sorrowful and even to death, right? Like, how interesting is it that Jesus would pull away consistently even with the 3? You guys tracking with me? Even Jesus had relational limits. He prioritized friendship, but he had limits to that ability. So let me give you a really quick tool as we end our time together called the circles of influence. This is really important. This has been massively helpful for me in my life, and it'll be really, really helpful for you regardless of your age and stage of life as we talk about what it means to cultivate friendship. So Jesus, we see this pattern of the circles of intimacy and influence and concern. So starting with the circle of intimacy, we see Jesus with Peter, James, and John. These are the people that he went deepest with. In fact, John would argue, you kind of watch John's writing, and he would argue that he was Jesus' best and closest friend. In case anybody's wondering, he was the one that Jesus loved. He made sure he included that in all of his writings, right? And so maybe Jesus had a best friend, John, and then Peter and James were also kind of part of that tight crew. So Jesus had this circle of intimacy. The people that were closest to him knew all of his stuff, and they carried the weight with him. But then he also had a circle of influence. That would have been the 12. Right? These are people that he lived life with. They broke bread together. They lived life together around the table. They did all this stuff together. And so they were shared influence. The intimacy is deep. I mean, you know everything. I got a few people in my life that are in my circle of intimacy. And I also have some people in my life that are in my circle of influence. That means I have influence on them and they have influence on me. They influence my behavior and I influence theirs. So my city group is a great expression of that, right? There's 12, 16 people that meet in my home and we are sharing influence together, right? And then lastly, we have Jesus' circle of concern. This is Jesus and the crowds. This is what we talk about where you live, work, and play. This is everyone else. This is areas that Jesus has influence with, but no one there influences him. So that's why people would say things like, oh, well, Jesus is a friend of tax collectors and sinners, and he's a drunkard. And right? Why? Because Jesus was always hanging out with people that looked nothing like him. How did he do it? Because he was influencing them, not the other way around. Are you tracking with me? So you need to look at your life with this paradigm right here and ask the question, who's in my circle of intimacy? Who's in my circle of influence? And who's in my circle of concern? Peter, James, and John, and then the 12. Listen, vulnerability starts with the 12, but Jesus would take it deeper with the 3. And the circle of concern. And some of us, guys, we need to adjust who's in which circle. By the way, this is also why you really pay attention to who you date and who you marry. Right? Because they have massive influence. Like if you're trying to apprentice your life under Jesus and you're dating someone who's not a follower in Jesus, it's going to be really hard when those two values clash, right? Even more so when people start to consider, oh, I'm going to follow Jesus and marry someone who doesn't follow Jesus at all. It makes it challenging. And Paul has plenty to say about it in Corinthians. So, there's a good chance that there's some people in your circle of intimacy right now that don't need to be there. Are they calling you up into the way of Jesus? There's some of you who have no one. 54% of this room has no one in their circle of intimacy. Some of you have your circle of influence, and there are people like in the car with me, driving by Tim McGraw's house, who influence you to like steal corn when you wouldn't normally do that. And there's some people in your circle of influence that you care about, listen, that you are allowed to care about, but they should not be in a place of influence over your life. So maybe you need to change some things. Maybe they should be moved into the circle of concern, right? And this is all about loving them well. So how do we choose? Because one of the big glaring realities this morning is, well, what if I don't have any friends? What if I don't have anybody in that circle of intimacy? How do I do this? One of the things that we see from the life of Jesus before he picked these guys is that he prayed all night. Right? He didn't just kind of eeny, meeny, miny, mow it. He was intentional. He had set his life on God and God's agenda for his life, and then he looked around at who was in that circle and invited them into deeper places. I heard it said this week that you and I cannot create true friendship. We have to discover it. And that's frustrating because some of you have deep longings for community and friendship and to be known and to share that, and it's just not available. Listen to C.S. Lewis here. I'm going to invite, well, I don't know, do we have somebody playing today? Paul on the guitar, maybe? Yep, thank you, Paul. Come on up. C.S. Lewis, he says, the very condition of having friends is that we should want something else besides friends. Those who have nothing can share nothing. Those who are going nowhere can have no fellow travelers. The idea of setting your heart and your mind on Jesus and chasing hard after Jesus and then looking up and looking around and seeing who is on this narrow path beside me and inviting them into friendship. Some of you look to like your city group, you look to a weekend gathering to provide friendship for you. But again, it's discovered, not manufactured. So if we want to make great friends, the first thing we should do is pursue Jesus. Chase hard after Jesus and then look up and see who's on that same road with us. To quote the great Samwise Gamgee from Lord of the Rings, there's a moment at the end of Lord of the Rings where Frodo's getting in the boat and he's trying to leave the crew and he says, "Go back, Sam! I'm going to Mordor alone." That's pretty close, right? Good voice acting there? Okay. And he says, "Of course you are, and I'm coming with you." And then he starts to drown. There's this amazing moment of life lived in adventure. And Frodo looks up over and over again, and Sam is there along for the ride, right? Friendship is discovered. So we should pray. Jesus says, ask, it'll be open to you. Seek, you'll find. Knock, and it'll be open to you. Ask, it'll be given to you. And so we should genuinely, man, if you don't have deep circles of intimacy, then pray and ask God for those realities. And lastly, let me give you this. We should practice the way of Jesus together in Boulder. Here at City Church, we provide plenty of catalysts for relationships. We can't give you friends. We don't do like a speed dating club where you cultivate friends and we match you up based on your personality and Enneagram type. We provide different opportunities, right? Weekends are a way you meet people and start to build community. You join a city group, you start to build community. We talked about the difference. And over time, you look up and friendships begin to happen. You join a weekend team and you start serving on the cafe team and the welcome team and production and the band, and you start living life with people, and those are all catalysts for friendship developed. But let's end with this today. Life is all about relationships. You know that. Our relationship with God and our relationship with one another, those are the things that matter. Whatever you're stressed about this morning, whatever you walked in with, whatever you've been carrying this week, it won't matter at the end of your life. When you're looking back on your life, the things that are going to matter are how you loved or how well you loved or how you didn't. The things that you look back on are what you prioritized and what you didn't. You're going to look back and you're going to realize that what you sacrificed or what you didn't are the things that matter most. And the big things that I think we're going to feel to regret over are what got in the way of the relationships that mattered most. Your friends, my friends, are one of the most powerful pieces of our formation, both to experience Jesus and be formed in the way of Jesus. So friends, cultivate your friendship with Jesus. Receive the love of God and let him form you. Let him be with you. Be with him. But then cultivate friends. Ask God for the opportunity to share life together more consistently and more deeply. Let me pray for us. God, thank you so much for our church. Thank you for a really beautiful community that you're building, a really beautiful family. Thank you for so many people that have chosen just to intentionally embrace community, people that we don't handpick, to abandon the desire for chemistry and say, I'm going to choose you as the family of Jesus. God, thank you for that. But God, we also acknowledge the deep longing of our souls to have chemistry, to have friends, and to have people that know us fully. And we see that in the life of Jesus. So would we see permission today that you had the 12 and you had the crowds and you engaged in a lot of different spheres, but you had Peter, James, and John that you pulled away with. So could we know friendship with you? And could we learn to be friends together and be formed in the way of Jesus with those closest to us? God, will we have the boldness and the wisdom and the discretion to look at our circles of influence and intimacy and concern and move things around as necessary so that we are more formed in the way of Jesus and not deformed into the way and the values of this world. For my friends in the room who are maybe wrestling with their relationship with God, of who you are, would they hear today that you're not just friendly, but you are a friend? That you desire them, that you delight in them, that you have a desire to be in relationship with them, and will they trust in you both for forgiveness to make things right that have been wronged, but also wholeness and new life in your family. So God, we give you our response time, and we ask you to lead us in putting into practice the things that you have for us. It's in Jesus' name. Amen.